Usually Skies, Delta United. What's Delta's angle? Anybody?
Delta Airlines.
Anyway, go ahead.
All right, so we did our research on Delta Airlines. I'm Graham.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Nick.
I'm Steven.
Delta background: on September 13th, 1928, Colette E. Woolman, one of the founders of Delta, and also pictured there, bought Huff Dalen Dusters, a crop dusting operation, which was based in Mason, Georgia. Soon after, he changed the name to Delta Airlines. Delta began operations on June 17th, 1929, with the inaugural flight from Dallas, Texas to Jackson, Mississippi. Delta has headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, and has since become the largest airline in the world based off of asset value and market capitalization, as well as the second largest airline in the world based off of passengers carried, fleet size, and revenue passenger kilometers flown. It is also the largest and the oldest airline that is currently operating in the United States, and has over 5,400 flights daily to over 319 destinations, including 54 countries across the world.
Alright, overall performance, as shown by this graph, which shows the net sales, it has increased every single year besides in 2016, went down slightly, but other than that, it's been increasing. The operating income is 6.1 billion. The net income is 3.5 billion. That's pretty average among the airline industries. And the sales growth is 4.12%, which is an increase, which is always good, and it's predicted to be increasing even more in the future. Liquidity, in case you didn't know, that's the formula. And so in 2015, it was 0.517, in 2016, 0.489, and in 2017, 0.422. So that means it's going down, which means the debts that need to be paid are greater than the assets. And although this might seem like a problem, it's actually pretty normal for the airline industry. It's actually currently at 0.422, which is actually higher than the industry average, which is 0.35.
Okay, so going off of that is solvency. So I have the numbers here, and the graph represents the numbers. So we're looking at debt to equity, which is found by dividing the liabilities by stockholders' equity. And you can see in 2015 it dropped going into 2016, and it rose again going into 2017. However, you'd think that'd be a bad thing because low debt to equity shows low leverage, which means high equity rate. However, it's very common for airline industries to be higher due to like the technological innovations. Going off of that, it proves that it's still invest worthy because the service is still very much needed, and it provides stable revenue and cash flows.
So we measured Delta's profitability using both gross profit margin and earnings per share. Delta's gross profit margin has stayed relatively stable the last 3 years. It saw a slight increase between 2015 to 2016, as well as a slight decrease in 2017 from 2016. This can be attributed to, this is relatively a smaller percentage than the industry average, and this can be attributed to Delta having larger net sales compared to other companies. And we also see a pretty similar trend for earnings per share, as in 2016 we saw an increase in earnings per share for Delta and a slight decrease in 2017 from 2016.
Expanding off that to a more specific or narrow group of competitors, they're more so on the top of the totem pole, so net sales won't vary as much. So for Southwest, they lead in net sales, with Delta falling close behind by only 7%, and then JetBlue's following Delta by only 6%. Furthermore, Furthermore, so the operating expenses and the operating income seems to be very similar between the three brands. And then it's for net income in general, Delta Airlines seems to be the smallest, with JetBlue and Southwest being the greater two of the three.
So our company needs to look at the price of oil to help determine the profitability for the future. And like the last 2 months, oil had recently declined, which increased their profitability. But the last week, prices have started to go up again. To protect themselves from the risk of volatile oil prices, they participate in fuel hedging. But this has historically caused a loss because they end up paying more than the price of oil than when it drops. So like they get into contracts beforehand. They are starting to implement free Wi-Fi on their new planes, and they intend on having it be like a company-wide policy. They're going to end up saving money by not paying out a third-party service provider to give their in-flight Wi-Fi. They have developed a new app which has decreased the amount of time it takes for employees to communicate with each other during pre-flights by 45%. This app helps clear confusion and get information to customers more quickly and efficiently. And they have had their best year of not having any cancellations, and including this Thanksgiving, they didn't have to cancel any flights. So we would recommend to buy into this company. So they have a strong earnings growth compared to the industry standard. They're up about 12%, while the airline industry has been down negative 10%. So strategic investments have helped their long-term plan. They recently acquired 49% of Group Aero Mexico and 10% of Group Air France. So they're looking into the future to expand internationally and compete. And so despite rising fuel costs and a scheduled retirement of a fleet of 727 planes, the large investments and the profitability have led us to recommend buying it.
Good. Can you go back, show me the slide where you have profit margin? Okay, so it's, okay.
Which one, this one or the next one?
Well, actually, go to the other one, because then I think there's an error on that one. So you show here that the net income, right, so the profit margin percentage, it's hard to read from back here, but you were saying that what JetBlue has a 16% net income, and is Southwest 16% as well?
Yes.
I'm reading. Okay, and Delta is only 8%, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the profit margin, and I think you guys were just saying that their profit margin is higher than competitors, but right there I see just the opposite.
Well, it's higher to other competitors. This is like the top of the totem pole. Delta's the third best airline, I believe, looking at like in overall rankings in like sales.
So you're saying the other industry airlines
We were
are
speaking more
lower than
broadly.
these three, these are the top three?
Yeah, we were speaking more broadly in the other side.
Okay. The other thing is, I just want the class to notice this. I didn't think about it when I made the airlines, one of the possible companies, because look at this chart, and this is right from part one, that Delta doesn't sell a product, right? They offer a service. It's a flight, correct? Yes, I mean, everybody agrees with me, so that's why they don't have cost of goods sold. So now go back to the previous slide. So that's what I don't understand when you're looking at the gross profit margin, because they don't have a gross profit margin. I'm not sure where you got those numbers. Do you follow what I'm saying? So if you go to the next slide. And if I look at gross profit,
Gotcha,
it's
Yeah.
what?
gotcha.
Right, so the net sales are 100%. So if they don't have, cost of goods sold, you don't, like, I don't know if you read that somewhere and they may define it a different way. But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that's where it doesn't, this slide and the other one don't really gel together. This, we can see the profitability, but the gross profit doesn't make like a lot of sense there. Okay, and then the one other thing was, the solvency slide. So Steve, you're talking about
Yeah.
this. So at the top you have debt to asset ratio, but then you
Yeah.
actually used other ratios, am I correct
Yeah,
on that?
I like looked more into it, and it said that like every company uses like a different like ratio depending on like their just depending on like the logistics, and it's a lot different. It's a lot more like
Well, the
unique with
debt
Delta.
to equity ratio, so people understand, you know how we looked at debt to total assets, so let's take this, so basically, we look at, okay, how much of the assets are being financed by debt? That's what I like about the total, debt to asset ratio. The one that Steve used is totally legitimate, debt to equity, it's comparing the two. So it's saying that like if you had, if, Delta had a debt to equity ratio of 1, that would mean 50% of the assets are financed by debt and 50% are financed by equity, but by owners. Do you follow everybody? So this ratio is less, so that means more of the companies being financed by the owners. I just was trying to
Yep.
explain it to people. It's looking at the same thing, just a different way. And then the only other comment, I wanted, who was talking about, Tyler, was it you, fuel hedging? Do you guys know what fuel hedging is? Can you just explain, just because I think it's.
So I had trouble understanding it. From what I understood was it varies on company to company. There are different, like, sort of, I mean, so different companies, some companies don't fuel hedge at all and they completely take the risk. What I had read was last year on Delta, it lost about $400 million, I believe, by hedging their fuel costs.
So basically, what a hedge is, because to some of you not understand what a hedge is, that's kind of my point. Yes, correct. So that's what a lot of companies, I know one year Southwest did very well. What companies do, you're right, it's a bet. So they basically take a bet. Do they think oil prices are gonna go up and down? Because that's one of their biggest expenses in the airline industry. And so if you bet that they're gonna go up, I think this is the way it works, I'm not that, informed on it. And you lock into this price, okay? And the oil prices go up, you're like on the good side of the hedge, do you follow? Versus it sounds like however the oil prices went, Delta was the other one. So if you think prices are gonna go up, oil's price is gonna go up, gas is gonna go up, then you hedge, which protects you against the increase in price. So that's, I mean, it makes sense that they had whatever you were saying about the hedging, but that's kind of what it is. That's what a lot of airlines have to do, because that's their business expense. So, anyway, I didn't mean to keep you up there so long, but thank you very much.